So you have a model and you want to apply textures to it. In this video we're going through everything you need for that. Applying textures to a model is known as a UV mapping, and in Blockbench it is very simple. To get started, go into project settings by right-clicking the bottom bar and select project. As you can see, we're working with a generic model. Here you can select between two UV modes, per face UV and box UV. Per face UV lets you UV map in any way you want, but it takes more time. Box UV automatically unwraps the UV for you. Texture size dictates how large the texture will be, with the first number indicating width and the second indicating height. To begin with, we'll make it 64 by 64. It's usually a good idea to keep texture sizes to numbers in powers of 2. We can select view mode in the top right corner or by pressing Z, allowing you to pick between textured, solid, wireframe and UV preview. For this demonstration we're using a 16 by 16 cube. While having the cube selected, you can see the UV window. Since we are in box UV mode, the texture has been mapped automatically and we can only move it within the texture. You cannot resize or rotate the selection, only mirror it along the x-axis. This mode is very quick and simple, but also very restrictive. To change it, we can click the texture size to bring up project settings and select per face UV. Now each face can be controlled individually. To move the UV, click the middle of the selection and drag it, or change the position numbers underneath. To resize the UV, click the edges of the corners and drag them, or change the scale numbers underneath. You can mirror the UV along the x-axis and the y-axis. To rotate the UV, drag the rotation bar. To apply the selected UV to all faces, click Apply to all faces. You can extend the UV to the entire texture with Maximize UV. To make the UV selection pixel perfect again, click Auto UV. If you want to remove the texture from a face, click Remove Face. To zoom in the UV window, press Ctrl and scroll, or right-click and go to zoom. If you have multiple cubes, it can be helpful to right-click, go to display and select all faces on all elements. If you already have a texture for the model, you can import textures by pressing Ctrl plus T. To add a new texture, select all the elements you want to apply the texture to, then go to the textures window and click create texture. Here you can add a name and change the resolution and background color. Keep the type as texture template. Checking rearrange UV means it will resize the texture to fit everything and will automatically map the UV in the most space-saving way. Checking power of 2 size will ensure that the texture size will consist of numbers to the power of 2. Checking padding will ensure 1 pixel of empty space will be left between each face. This is useful if you're going to screenshot the model in Blockbench, as adjacent textures tend to bleed into the edge in the display. Once we hit confirm, we can see that it has generated a template texture and that the UV has been automatically mapped out for us. If we make another cube, it will not automatically have any textures applied to it, so to apply a texture to it, you can right-click the texture and click Apply to Elements. Then manually map the UV again, or you can click Append Elements to Template, which will automatically map the UV and resize the texture as needed. If you want to resize the texture, you can right-click it and select Resize Texture. Here you can also choose what the expanded area will be filled with. Transparency, flat color, copy and repeat, or scaling to fit, which will stretch the texture out. If you save your project, you will unlock another option. If you right-click the texture and select Edit, you can open it in your image editing software of choice. However, you can also make the textures in Blockbench. You can go into painting mode by going to the top right corner and selecting Paint. You can toggle the painting grid from the toolbar or by pressing G. You can disable shading in the top right to get more accurate colors. You can pick colors in the color window on the right, which you can also add to a palette by clicking the plus symbol underneath. In the tabs above, you can select palette to see a color palette library. Here you can import any .gpls you have downloaded, export them, generate them from textures, sort them by brightness, or load any of the default ones. If you want to select a color from the model, you can temporarily equip the color picker tool by holding Alt. You can select the paintbrush from the toolbar or by pressing B. Here you can adjust the size of the brush, the opacity, and the softness. You can draw lines by holding Shift while placing the brush on 2 different points. If you are painting something symmetrical, you can speed up the process by enabling mirror painting in the toolbar. You can easily make tiling textures by putting a face next to itself. You can prevent changes in transparency by enabling Lock Alpha Channel. This is useful if you are texturing colored glass. The eraser can be selected by pressing E and works in the same way as the brush, but it won't work at all if you have locked the alpha channels. The paint bucket comes with an opacity slider and 4 different fill modes. Face and element mode only work in the 3D view, filling up entire faces or entire cubes. Connected colors and colors mode work in both the paint window and the 3D view, but will only affect the colors of single faces in the 3D view. Connected colors mode will only fill contiguous pixels, while colors mode will fill all pixels of the same color. You can also turn on erase mode to make the paint bucket erase instead of fill. The draw shape tool can be selected by pressing U and allows you to make 4 different shapes: filled rectangle, hollow rectangle, filled circle, and hollow circle. You can change the line width and opacity of these, and there is also both paint mode and mirror painting available for this tool. The gradient tool allows you to quickly make a gradient going from your selected color to transparent. You can also adjust the base opacity of this tool. The copy paste tool can be selected by pressing M and can be used in the paint window. Here you can drag a selection to copy or select cut underneath. You can also mirror and rotate the selection by 90 degrees. When done, select place. When you want to rearrange the UV after you've made a texture, you can enable move texture with UV. If you go to the top menu and click texture, you can do standard color editing like brightness and contrast, saturation and hue, invert colors, and adjust curves. If you transform, rotate something in box UV mode, it will not rotate the texture, so you will have to manually rearrange the textures or switch to per face UV. If you want to create animated textures, this will only work if you format the model as a Java block item or a Bedrock model. You can change formats by going to File, Convert Project, and select the format you need. Right-click the texture, select Resize Texture, then type in the amount of frames you want. In the bottom left, you can now play the texture or select the frame you want to draw on. Click the speedometer symbol to change the FPS of the animation. And with that, you have all the tools needed to texture a model. In the next video, you're going to learn how to animate it.